Mary Joy. Mary Joy, do you want to lead the opening prayer? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Let us put ourselves in the holy presence of God, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, as we gather today to review the principles of environmental planning, we humbly seek your guidance and wisdom. Help us to approach this study not merely as an academic exercise, but as a sacred responsibility to care for your creation. Inspire us and grant us the knowledge. May our learning today equip us to make a positive impact on the environment and contribute to a more just and sustainable world. Furthermore, we pray for success in the upcoming examination, that our efforts and understanding will be reflected accurately in our results. We thank you for the opportunity to learn and grow. We ask these things in your holy name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Mary Joy. So next now is welcome to ikailan na itong kwan natin na review class, but I think we need to welcome those who are new here. So hindi ko kasi memorize, so it's okay. So welcome everyone to those who are who's attending first time, right? So let's see. We're now on number 2. Okay, in the table of specifications on history. Diyan, if you can show the heading for the subject area number 2, which is, sige, okay, so, yung heading, yung history, nakalagay lahat yung kan. Okay, that's the one. So this is the subject area number 2, because subject area number 1 is planning processes, strategy, techniques, and strategies. So number 2 is history, concepts, theories, and principles of environmental planning. It has overall weight of 20%. So we're now on number 2. Now we can proceed to the actual topic that we need to undertake this evening. So it's city growth, urbanization, ecological processes, and location. 10%, 10 items. So spread in the following levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. 3 items under remembering, and then 4 items under understanding, then 3 items applying under analyzing. So, and then we have, of course, I need to give the overview for number 2. This section examines the interconnected processes driving the development of cities over time. So the growth and expansion of urban centers are deeply linked to economic activities, population dynamics, and environmental conditions. So understanding these dynamics allows planners to design cities that can support sustainable growth and mitigate negative effects associated with rapid urbanization. So, I mentioned about those key concepts: city growth and expansion, urbanization and its impacts, ecological processes in urban growth, geographical location, city and city development. There are also the patterns of city growth, whereby we will be going back to those concepts again that cities develop through various models and patterns, such as concentric zone model, where growth radiates from the central business district. Another key concept or another pattern is sector model, where growth occurs in wedges or sectors. Then we also have multiple nuclei model, which cities develop in multiple centers of activity. And of course, there are still other patterns. So I just gave um three three among those common patterns of city growth. Then we have 2.1, identify the recurring urbanization problems affecting the development of cities. 3%, three items. So under remembering. So in 2.1, as cities grow due to industrialization, economic opportunities, and population surges, they often encounter recurring challenges. So we need to, under 2.1, we need to understand key urbanization problems such as overcrowding and population pressure. So overcrowding leads to congested neighborhoods, also informal settlements, and the proliferation of slums, particularly in cities experiencing large rural to urban migration. Then there are also problems in housing, like house shortages on housing, and as I mentioned earlier, it's informal settlements. So the inability to provide affordable housing to all urban residents results in informal housing developments. So we commonly call them squatter areas. So poor housing conditions exacerbate public health crisis and increase vulnerability to natural hazards. Also, key other key urbanization problems include traffic congestion and transportation issues. So there's issues on insufficient road networks, then ineffective public transport systems, and car dependency, which leads to chronic traffic congestion. And of course, we know for a fact that congestion impacts productivity, air quality, what else, and overall livability of cities, among others. Um, Other problems include environmental degradation. Urbanization leads to deforestation, pollution, and loss of biodiversity due to land conversion and industrial activities. Air and water pollution are major ecological consequences of rapid city growth. Problems also include inadequate waste management systems. So many growing cities struggle to dispose of solid waste efficiently, leading to open dump sites and water contamination. Also, problems on inefficient waste management results in health risks and ecological imbalances. Um, there there are other concerns also, such as social inequality and urban poverty, whereby urbanization often worsens social disparities between different groups. So high employment rates, lack of access to services, and marginalization of low-income groups contribute to urban poverty. So there's also issues on infrastructure backlog, where basic services such as water supply, electricity, drainage, and telecommunications often lag behind population demand. So this backlog impacts quality of life and hinders long-term development. and many more. It's such a long list, like loss of agricultural land. So we should not forget that expanding urban areas often consume prime agricultural land. That's why we need to delineate, the what's that? The NAPAAT, um, what's the network of protected agricultural areas, and for development. So we will be dealing on that. Then, because this threatens, when we expand urban areas, it threatens also food security and economic sustainability. So maybe we should not also forget about urban heat island effects, whereby the increase in concrete surfaces and reduced vegetation in urban areas causes local temperatures to rise. So this contributes to climate stress and health risk, especially during heat waves. So urban planners need to really pay attention to um, concerns like, so which approaches should we bring forth to address urbanization problems that I just mentioned? Such a long list. So we have sustainable land use planning, mixed use, improve public transport systems, affordable housing programs, efficient waste management. So habang may problema, we exist as planners, right? So uh, and because that's our job, right? To provide solutions to these problems. Kung walang problems, so uh we cease to exist, right? So, okay, now we can go to 2.2 that says correlate the spatial impacts. That is size, density, and form emanating from anthropogenic activities of cities. So what are these anyway? 2.2. So, okay, anthropogenic. Well, a lot of things here, 3%, three items, under analyzing. Yeah, analyzing, level in the Bloom's taxonomy. So I also prepared some questions there on 2.2. Let's see if I completed that. Let me just check if nakarating tayo dyan, Jen. Anyway, okay. Let me check if I finished everything. So I need to complete um 3 items for 2.2, for items for 2.3. So this 2.2, cities as hubs of human activity are heavily influenced by anthropogenic. So what is this anthropogenic? These are what we call the human-driven activities, including industrial development, transportation networks, land use, and urban infrastructure expansion. So these activities fundamentally alter the spatial characteristics of cities, including their size, density, and physical form. So I mentioned about city size, where we should understand the impacts of the anthropogenic impact. Human activities such as industrialization, suburbanization, and decentralization of workplaces contribute to the physical expansion of cities beyond their original boundaries. So this often results in urban sprawl characterized by low density, spread out developments in the suburban peripheries. So yeah, there are what are these examples that we need to prepare, we need to study here? uh, maybe the post-World War II suburban boom in North America. It was driven by automobile dependency, so it led to sprawling residential communities. So in developing countries, informal settlements and unregulated growth often result in fragmented urban expansion. So what's the implication of this? Larger city sizes increase the demand for infrastructure, transportation, and public services, but also lead to environmental challenges such as the loss of agricultural land and biodiversity. So how about density? So what do we need to study about this one? Like the compact city versus sprawl. Density referring to the concentration of population or activities within a given area is shaped by human-driven planning decisions, housing policies, and transport infrastructure. So high-density development is common in city centers, while low-density sprawl occurs in suburban areas due to zoning practices and housing preferences. How about compact cities? Cities like Tokyo, Hong Kong, they adopt a high-density compact model integrating vertical development, efficient public transport, and mixed-use zones to accommodate growing populations. Then low-density sprawl, suburban developments in cities like you know, Los Angeles, they reflect low-density growth, primarily reliant on cars, single-family homes, and disconnected land uses. So what's the implication? High-density cities promote sustainability through efficient resource use and public transport systems. In contrast, low-density sprawl increases car dependency, congestion, and infrastructure cost while reducing land use efficiency. So how about urban farms? Let me see there. So urban farm. Um, so the shaping, this is it shapes the city structures. So urban form refers to the physical layout of cities, including the organization of streets, buildings, public spaces, and transportation corridors. So human-driven planning, architectural design, and socio-political influences shape this form. Cities can adopt different forms such as grid systems, also the radiocentric layouts or polycentric structures. So a lot more to discuss about urban form. So I mentioned about radiocentric cities, where streets radiate outward from a central point with important nodes of activity in concentric rings, while gridiron cities, it's a structured orthogonal grid which promotes navigability and land use organization. And I also mentioned about polycentric development, where multiple subcenters or districts, each with specialized functions, reduce congestion in the urban core. So different urban forms affect mobility, accessibility, and land use efficiency. So radiocentric models may centralize activity but create congestion at the core, while grid or polycentric designs promote decentralization and enhance connectivity. So a lot more to deal with that. So we'll have more in-depth discussions on that. So I have some slides there, but just to introduce 2.1 to 2.2 and 2.3. So for 2.3, last in under section 2 is cite the legal basis in creating cities in the Philippine setting. So we have a lot also to discuss on We're still on history, right? History. So, but it already included legal basis there. 4%. Okay, 4 items under, what's this? Understanding level of the Bloom's taxonomy. So that's 2.3. So I think I also did or also had questions on that. So I think I provided complete set of questions on 2.3 as well, Jen. So if we are okay now, then probably can already unshare. Okay. Yeah, so that's 2.3. Okay, so time to share also my questions. I hope everyone will participate. Don't hesitate to participate. Okay. So not just few people para ma-practice things. Let's see, where am I? China's. Okay, I think I need to go first. Mm. Here and all right. So I hope you see, all of you can see my slides. Oops. Bakit kaya lagi? Oh, okay. So this is the Canva version of the table of specifications. Yeah. So I think I already mentioned that. So we can start. So which of the following is a common consequence of urban sprawl? Although, remembering. So it's one of those things that I can
Letter
answer
C,
it.
ma'am.
Letter
Letter
C
C
po.
po.
C.
Letter C. Yeah, that's correct. So I hope everyone can already at least the mastery level in the strategies, so we can, but of course there would be more challenging questions on each of those sections coming up for your practice to help you out and master the strategies. So okay, number 2.
B po.
B.
B.
Okay. All right. So I hope we can all agree that answer is letter B.
Letter C po.
C po. C.
Yeah,
Letter C po.
letter C. So medyo tatagalan ko lang ng konti so everyone can understand why it's letter C and can spot the answer. Okay. So we are now on 2.2.
Letter C po, ma'am.
Letter C po.
Okay. Very good. Few seconds lang yan, ano? So, I'm impressed. I already defined anthropogenic.
Disperse po. B. Low density suburban developments.
This letter B, correct?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So, tagalan ko lang ng konti so everyone can see. Anyway, you will have copies on this anyway. So, okay. Hmm.
Letter C po.
Okay. Greater infrastructure demands in peripheral or suburban zones. We're now in 2.3. Wait lang ha. Let's see. Kanina, 2.2. Okay. 2.3 na. Oh,
Letter A, ma'am.
Do you want C?
so I did not give the, yung title. Okay, so the Local Government Code, RA 7160 is the Local Government Code of 1991 that serves as the comprehensive law governing local governments, including cities. So it provides the legal framework for their creation, classification, and responsibilities. And 8749 is the Clean Air Act. Okay, focuses on air quality, not the structure or creation of cities. So, PD 957. So those who are practicing real estate here, or PD 9587 deals with real estate and housing projects. So
Protection, ma'am. For the condo and subdivision project. For the land.
yes, correct. That's the subdivision and condominium buyer's protection decree. Then the R8 and 587 by this time you should be very familiar because this is the Environmental Planning Act of 2013. So iba pa naman during your board exam they will not provide the title. Okay, so be familiar. This is memory work.
Letter C, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Everyone knows that to qualify for cityhood, a locality must have at least 50,000 inhabitants. Do we have an update here, or this is already the most updated one? So, as mandated by Section 450 of the Local Government Code of 1991. And this requirement ensures that the area has sufficient population density to justify urban governance. So, incorrect, all others can go.
Letter C.
Letter C, ma'am.
Yes, so because there are three minimum the income, land area, and population. Okay, so
B, ma'am. Passes legislative act.
yes, so aside from that one, so for cityhood, Congress must pass a law that's then ratified through a plebiscite in the affected locality. So this ensures democratic approval from the residents. Also, you can also answer by knowing the separation of powers of legislative, executive, and judiciary. Let's go. Ay, sorry. Gumagalaw ba? Bakit kaya? Yan na ba yung last? So, yun na yung last. Okay. So, I'll stop share and I'll continue with few slides. Okay. I'll stop here so that I can go to, here. It's very early. So, I'll just choose, let's see. Ano kaya pipiliin natin dito sa some related from yesterday to or maybe yung kanina na. Ano ba yan? Yung device. Here. Yeah, probably I can start here. So, few slides lang, don't worry. It's okay. So, I'd like you to linger a little. So, it's suburbanization and motor cities. Okay. So, let me start with that. I also mentioned earlier in my discussion on section 2, suburbanization in the US gained significant momentum following World War II, driven by two key factors. The population boom means the baby boom generation. So, and the rapid rise in automobile use. So, the mass availability of cars from manufacturers like General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, made suburban living accessible to millions, resulting in the king mentality. So, these cultural shifts symbolized a desire for mobility, freedom, and privacy, which became synonymous with suburban life. Also, you see urban decline there, that suburban growth often came at the expense of historic urban centers. So public funds which have been allocated for revitalizing inner cities were diverted to build gated communities and suburban infrastructure for middle and upper class residents. Consequently, city cores experienced neglect, with employment and investment moving to suburban and exurban areas. So Pierce Lewis described these declining city centers as hollow cores or donut cities. Okay, please remember those terms, reflecting the visual emptiness and lack of vitality within urban spaces. So, with suburbanization came increased automobile dependency, leading to rising air pollution and environmental concerns. So, as studied by Albert Arnold Lafon Gore at Harvard University, climate change issues have intensified since the 1950s, largely fueled by suburban expansion. Low-density residential areas, often referred to as amorphic sprawl, expand faster than population growth rates. This expansion requires significant energy, infrastructure, and resources, putting environmental systems under stress. What are the characteristics of urban or amorphic sprawl? Amorphic sprawl describes a pattern of land development that's dispersed and inefficient. Unlike compact planned developments, this type of sprawl occurs along metropolitan fringes without a clear structure or form. So urban infrastructure such as roads, water, sewers is extended in a piecemeal manner, leading to inefficiencies and environmental degradation. So key points include first, fragmented and disconnected land use under amorphic sprawl. I'm still talking about amorphic sprawl. Second, high energy and resource consumption. Then third, limited public transit options, reinforcing dependence on cars. So what are the social and impacts and accessibility issues? Distances in suburban settings often become too great for walking or cycling, forcing residents to rely on cars for basic tasks. So this creates accessibility challenges, such as older people who can no longer drive struggle with mobility. Then young people below the legal age or legal driving age face limitations in accessing services, education, and social interactions, among others. So these barriers result in social isolation for certain demographic groups and emphasize the need for better urban planning solutions, such as mixed-use developments and improved public transport, etc. So the planning lessons here that we can get could be urban planners today can learn from the issues associated with suburban sprawl so that we can think of or we can be more effective when we think about promoting compact mixed-use neighborhoods and also investing in public transit and non-motorized transport infrastructure or prioritizing sustainable development to reduce environmental impact. So let me move to the next one. Those are some of those examples how suburbanization and amorphic sprawl look like. So who are these? How many of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So among these 9 personalities that you can see in the photo. So who are you who are you most familiar with? Do you know them? So but don't panic. You still have time to memorize about them and get to know them better. So the urban renewal movement emerged as a major response to post-World War II urban decline in North America. It aimed to address deteriorating housing, blighted neighborhoods, and outdated infrastructure while promoting economic growth and modernization. However, the movement was controversial for its impact on displacing communities and the destruction of established neighborhoods. So key figures and their contributions provide insight into the successes and failures of this era. So number 1, Robert Moses. So who's Robert Moses? So he's one of those influential urban planners of the 20th century. So Moses was known for his large-scale infrastructure projects in New York, including highways, bridges, and parks. So Moses played a central role in building highways and clearing slums to create new public housing and commercial districts. However, his projects often led to the displacement of low-income communities. So there were criticisms, sure, yeah, there were criticisms about Robert Moses. Though one of those criticisms include his focus on car-centric development contributed to urban sprawl and community disruption, which is now a significant critic of the movement. So Ed Logue, he was a prominent urban renewal leader who emphasized large-scale redevelopment projects, particularly in New Haven, Connecticut, and later in Boston. So Lug's efforts included the construction of large public housing complexes and civic infrastructure to rejuvenate declining neighborhoods. Like Robert Moses, there were also controversies associated with Ed Lug. His projects sometimes faced a backlash due to their top-down planning approach. So you know what's top-down? That's the opposite of bottom-up, right? So leading to this destruction of neighborhoods without adequate community consultation. So he lacked that community consultation skills probably, which is now mostly emphasized these days. Rexford Guy Tagwell, 1891 to 1979. He was an economist and planner known for his role in the Greenbelt Towns program during the New Deal. So there was an era of the New Deal. Then Tagwell's work laid the foundation for integrating green spaces and suburban development with affordable housing, exemplified by his Greenbelt towns that combine urban and rural living. So his vision demonstrated early attempts to balance urban growth with community welfare. So I think he has a good qualifications or yeah. So how about Richard King Melian? He was a philanthropist. I don't really know him, but I've read so because I've been teaching about this since 2014. So it's been like more than 1 decade, right? So I've been doing this one. So he was a philanthropist and industrialist, instrumental in Pittsburgh urban revitalization. So Melian helped implement the Renaissance Plan, which aimed to rebuild Pittsburgh's central business district and clean up pollution from its industrial base. So one of his legacies is his contributions pertaining to revitalization. He revitalized Pittsburgh's downtown, but faced criticism also for focusing on commercial interests over residential neighborhoods. How about Abraham and William Levitt? So they're a duo here in the photo. So the Levitt family, okay, they're both Levitt. So they pioneered the concept of mass-produced suburban housing, creating affordable and uniform neighborhoods known as Levittowns, like Levittowns in Long Island and Pennsylvania. So Levittowns became symbols of post-war suburbanization, offering affordable housing to returning veterans, but excluding minorities through discriminatory practices like racial covenants. So a lot of controversies, their exclusionary practices and contribution to suburban sprawl remain significant criticisms. So there's also Aldo Rossi, 1931 to 1997. He was an Italian architect and theorist who influenced urban renewal through his ideas on architectural preservation and memory. So Rossi argued against wholesale demolition during renewal projects and advocated for maintaining the historical fabric of cities. So his ideas were crucial in shifting the focus of renewal from demolition to restoration and preservation in later decades. So there's Catherine Bauer Worcester, 1905 to 1964. Quite a long while, right, for her, because her role was she was a housing reform advocate and key figure in the development of U.S. public housing policy. She championed affordable housing and improved living conditions for low-income families, emphasizing community planning over isolated development. So Bower's influence ensured that public housing became a core element of urban renewal through the implementation, um, or though the implementation often fell short of her ideals. So I think I covered everyone there, so I can next one. Oh, sorry. All right. So we already discussed about but this is more dedicated slide for Robert Moses, right? So as I mentioned earlier, he stands as one of the most influential, controversial, and powerful figures in American urban planning history. So, by the way, I remember now that although he never held elected office, his role as New York City's Park Commissioner and head of various city and state planning agencies granted him immense authority over infrastructure projects between 1924 and 1968. So he had this massive public works and infrastructure development where I still remember this one, this was lectured by the former dean of SARP, attorney and environmental planner Astea Santiago. So she said that this one about Moses spearheaded projects valued at over 27 billion, leaving a lasting impact of New York City's landscape. So Moses designed and constructed vital highways such as the Bronx Whitestone Parkway. So I'm just reading here. Long Island Expressway and more. So his influence extended to the development of hundreds of, city parks, playgrounds, and outdoor recreational spaces. So notably, he ordered the planting. So this is another milestone that he ordered the planting of 2 million trees to improve urban greenery. So I think PRC also is, the PRB mainly, or the PRC in general, I think they're advocating for, tree planting, in all cities or so they have this, that's their main, advocacy at the moment. And so, but he ordered 2 million trees, ordered the planting of 2 million trees, right? But which year was that, right? So now we're still here. But he had done that before. I mean, 1960s, but that was a nine. So he reigned 1924, 1968, and through to which year was that? But, Moses also constructed public housing primarily aimed at clearing slums and providing low-income housing, but often faced criticism for gentrification. So I always say about gentrification and displacement of communities. So again, we need to really know what's gentrification, how it impacts the community, or referring, or if we did gentrification from history and today, so what's the difference? So we need to also discuss about that. From you can discuss among you and your coworkers, probably, and the MPDC if you're with government. So what's gentrification? What's the relevance of this one? Are we still experiencing that, or do we have examples of gentrification in Philippines? Or so Moses was instrumental in developing the Lincoln Center, okay, for the performing arts, the Shea Stadium and Flushing Meadows Corona Park, so mostly parks, right, which hosted two world fairs. And that's why it mentioned there, because it hosted two world fairs in 1939 and 1964. So these major landmarks became cultural and economic hubs, but sparked debate over their impact on displaced communities. So, okay, so let me say that now, what you're saying now is the definition, what's all behind this urban renewal and tax increment financing. Do you know really the principles of this? So urban renewal is a strategic redevelopment approach initiated by the US federal government under the Comprehensive Housing Act of 1949. It was established to tackle issues in neighborhoods suffering from urban decay, deterioration, and poor planning. So this program emphasizes restoring communities by implementing targeted improvements that can attract private investment, also to provide housing options and generate employment opportunities. So it typically focuses on deteriorated infrastructure, abandoned buildings, or poorly utilized land. So what are the core objectives of urban renewal? So number one, to revitalize neighborhoods by building or enhancing parks, streets, and public spaces. Second, to create community hubs such as plazas, community centers, and greenways to foster social interaction and improve urban aesthetics. Then also to leverage private investments for job creation, economic growth, and housing development. So a lot to mention about the core objectives of urban renewal within this context. So how about tax increment financing, or the TIF? It's one of the most critical aspects of urban renewal is this financing mechanism where TIF plays a central role. TIF works by using future increases in property tax revenues generated from the improvement of an area to finance current urban redevelopment projects. Did you understand that? So TIF, or the tax increment financing, you are projecting future increases in property tax revenues. So generated by the improvement of an area to finance current urban redevelopment projects. So there's a step-by-step process here, so we can make a breakdown of how TIF works. Like number one, you need to set boundaries. So city, can you imagine? Okay, please use your strengthen your visualization of everything here that you can see here and what you hear from me. So city authorities, for example, so number one, when you set the boundaries, city authorities designate a specific area for urban renewal, so referred to as the urban renewal zone. So there's a zone there. Okay. Some then the city drafts a comprehensive urban renewal plan targeting desirable projects. For example, streetscape upgrades or new public housing to attract, in, uh, investors. People so that you can attract people to live in the urban renewal zone. And then third is you issue urban renewal bonds. To begin redevelopment, the city issues bonds to finance capital investments. Then, as redevelopment projects are completed, property values within the designated area typically rise. And so, tax revenue increase because the difference between the initial property taxes from pre-development and increased taxes post-redevelopment is known as the tax increment. Then there's repayment of bonds. This incremental tax is collected and used to pay off the urban renewal bonds. So I hope when you will be asked questions during the board exam, so what are those similar concepts? Probably they might ask that what are those similar concepts that you can think of when it comes to urban renewal and tax increment financing. So there are a lot of examples, right? That when you enhance public amenities, for example, then the TIF method ensures that the upgraded infrastructure such as parks and transport systems directly benefit the local community. But developers also, the city probably or municipality can incentivize developers to invest in previously neglected areas, thereby driving growth. So some experts argue that TIF can lead to gentrification, which means displacement of low-income residents and the overuse of public funds, right, to benefit private investors. But so without strong regulatory oversight, these projects could favor commercial interests over community needs. So TIF is widely used globally as an innovative financing mechanism to balance public and private interests while achieving long-term urban development goals. So, but when properly executed, it revitalizes neglected communities and improves the livability, attractiveness, and economic output. So I still have, you still have that. So regarding gentrification, it's a form of urban renewal where blighted or economically underdeveloped areas of a city undergo substantial upgrades, making them attractive to higher income individuals, businesses, investors. So this process often involves redeveloping old buildings, waterfronts, and inner city neighborhoods into modern residential, commercial, and recreational hubs. So gentrification is driven by the need to revitalize decayed areas. So we have that urban decay concept that were once abandoned by affluent residents due to urban decay, so industrial decline or suburbanization. As improvements are made, real estate values increase, attracting businesses and wealthier residents while reshaping the social and economic landscape of the area. So there are key characteristics that we should be familiar with, like when you upscale previously blighted areas, so blighted areas which previously had decaying infrastructure, poor housing, and inadequate services, they're revitalized to attract investment and development. So that's upscaling. So examples include renovated waterfronts or historic districts being transformed into vibrant centers of commerce and culture. Then one of the main drivers also of gentrification is the return of the upper and middle classes who find the revitalized inner city areas desirable due to proximity to work, also to entertainment and cultural hubs. So this movement can be contrasted with earlier suburbanization trends when wealthier residents fled urban centers. Okay, because you're concerned about returning of these people, the return of the elite. Then areas like old industrial zones and ports become trendy and highly valuable once retrofitted with modern amenities like parks, shopping districts, and high-rise condominiums. So there are also impacts of gentrification. You can see that in the last bullet there in the slide. The yappification. Okay, yeah. The term yappification refers to the influx of young urban professionals, often referred to as yappies, who favor luxury condominiums, coffee shops, and cultural spaces. So what do we have today? We have the shared spaces, right? And now if we think about some relationships of this concept. So this development often leads to new housing structures, higher rents, and displacement of long-term, lower-income residents. Also, another impact of gentrification, social and economic displacement. While gentrification brings investment in urban renewal, it often excludes marginalized and low-income groups who can no longer afford to live in these areas due to rising property land values or property values. So long-standing residents and small businesses are frequently priced out, leading to disruptions in community bonds and social networks. Another impact of gentrification is gentrification contributes to local economic growth, though through increased tax revenue, right? So improves infrastructure and job creation. However, this growth tends to favor higher income groups and may exacerbate social inequality within cities. So as planners, urban planners must strike a balance between revitalizing decayed areas and maintaining social equity. Okay. We need also inclusive development policies. We need rent control measures and affordable housing requirements can help mitigate the negative effects of gentrification and prevent displacement. So can go. I think this is my last slide. Just a moment. Okay. So urban renewal through gentrification became a controversial planning strategy in the 1960s, particularly in the US, where its implementation often meant the demolition of slums and predominantly Black neighborhoods. Civil rights activists led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., so he just celebrated his anniversary, right? So before I think that was just on time for the off-taking of Donald Trump in the US, but I'm not pro Trump, okay? So, but I just want to maybe if you haven't read about that, so I think the reason why, so just kwento lang. So the reason why former president, outgoing during that time, outgoing US president, and spent his time in a Black community. So I forgot that city or that where he celebrated in church, where it's traditionally a Black community. It's because of this one, the celebrating also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. So now we're discussing about that. And, civil rights activists viewed these actions before as forms of racism and segregation. And during this period, James Baldwin referred to urban renewal. So, James Baldwin referred to urban renewal as Negro removal. Okay, Negro removal, illustrating the severe socio-political impacts and forced displacements that affected African American communities. Many poor, long-established communities were displaced in favor of high-value developments aimed at attracting wealthier, often white residents and businesses. So while these developments brought aesthetic and economic improvements to the city, they also deepened social inequalities by sidelining marginalized communities without ensuring their participation in the redevelopment process. So what else? Manuel Casado. We are now on second bullet. According to Manuel Castells, in 1983, gentrification emerged from the combined influence of non-conventional artistic and creative social groups, including their gays and bohemians. They're known for revitalizing neighborhoods through cultural and artistic renewal. There are also hipsters and yuppies, so young professionals attracted to upscale real estate, nightlife, and unique neighborhood experiences. So this influx of creative and professional groups helped establish vibrant yet exclusive urban areas. Unlike traditional suburban families, many of these groups were single individuals or couples without children. So you are understanding this one. So we are tracing it from history. So they prioritized lifestyle over family-oriented living, often thriving in nightlife and creative service industries like bars, restaurants, and theaters. So Castells highlights how this shift altered urban spaces, reducing the need for maintaining traditional community centers or social bonds. So the urban core transitioned from being a space of shared identity and multi-generational living to one driven by consumerism, convenience, and social status. So you can see here. Also, we need to understand this last bullet. Gentrification is often centerless and soulless. So, because they prioritize private luxury over public community life, unlike new urbanism, which aims to recreate neighborhood-oriented designs, focusing on walkability, green spaces, and social inclusivity, gentrification often focuses on individual comfort and convenience. So new urbanism seeks to blend community life and modern infrastructure, while gentrification, by contrast, frequently isolates individuals in upscale, exclusive enclaves disconnected from the broader city environment. So, I hope that, okay, so I have two last slides. Please bear with me. We did not meet last night. Sorry about that. So the rise of social protest movements and the rise of advocacy or activists or equity planning, okay? So I hope you can see the related concepts here, or it's a equity planning. So the rise of social protest movements in the 1960s was driven by large-scale gentrification and the demolition of marginalized communities. As industrial cities rapidly redeveloped, entire neighborhoods, often home to low-income Black and immigrant families, were displaced in favor of wealthier developments. So this led to widespread civil unrest and community mobilization, giving birth to the advocacy or equity school of planning, which focuses on community empowerment, social equity, and conflict resolution. The planning approach was grounded in community development and conflict management disciplines, with planners acting as mediators. So you have a role there, acting as mediators between marginalized communities and powerful institutions. So the objective was to shift planning decisions away from elite-driven processes and advocate for the needs of the poor, the last, and the lost. So, let's see there. Goals, core beliefs, okay. So we have core beliefs of advocacy, planning, and serving the marginalized. Serving the marginalized. The advocacy planning school stresses that the planning process must take an active role in addressing systemic injustices. So there are guiding principles here. It includes prioritizing the redistribution of power and resources toward the disadvantaged and powerless. So if you read about those advocates we have here, so they're the advocates, so Paul Davidoff, Saul David Alinsky. So if you read their books, and you would understand more about the advocacy planning school. And they also defended the interests of the poor against the dominance of businesses and government agencies. They also ensured that decisions about housing, infra, and public services include community input. So does it ring a bell? So most of our laws include participation, public participation, similar concepts. So during urban renewal projects, advocacy planners would oppose mass evictions and negotiate for policies like affordable housing, community centers, public services, etc. So, we need to also know what are the goals of advocacy planning. So, number one, social justice and equity in housing and other social services. Then provision of essential services, also addressing gaps in public utilities, transport, and health services, and many more. Also environmental protection. So advocacy planning signaled a paradigm shift in the role of planners, moving away from being neutral technocrats to activist professionals who acknowledge their role in solving social problems. So advocacy planning recognized the structural inequalities demand explicit action, not passive facilitation. This shift also challenged the traditional backroom policymaking approach, if you know about backroom policymaking approach, where powerful elites could negotiate urban renewal projects without public scrutiny. And advocacy planning brought these discussions into the public sphere, where organized and community groups could exert pressure on decision makers. So, if you look here, so this is the last slide for tonight. So that to conclude, those I discussed about urban renewal and gentrification, etc. And so, advocacy planning now provides frameworks for social justice and inclusive development. So, if you look at the contributions of Paul Davidoff, he's the father of advocacy planning. In 1965, Paul Davidoff established the concept of advocacy planning, challenging the traditional belief that planning should be technocratic and neutral. Davidoff argued that the idea of serving a single public interest was inherently flawed, as it ignored the multiple, often conflicting interests present in any community. Instead, he advocated for pluralistic planning, where marginalized groups would have their own planners representing their specific needs. So Davidoff emphasized that planning is political, not purely technical. So today we're always defining. So planning is both political and technical, isn't it? So we normally read that from articles, from books. So it came from Davido because during that time he emphasized that planning is political, not purely technical. And his ideas became the foundation of community-based planning, leading planners to act as advocates for underrepresented groups in public housing, transportation, and land use policies. So, I think David Alinsky was more of a hardcore advocate or advocate of advocacy planning, or yeah, leader on this particular era. He wrote Conflict Pragmatics and Confrontation and Community Organizing. Saul Alinsky, in his work Rules for Radicals in 1972, built on the concept of advocacy through conflict pragmatics or conflict confrontation. His approach highlighted the importance of confronting power structures directly to achieve justice for the poor and disenfranchised. So you can imagine the life of Saul Alinsky during that time. So maybe he's always confrontational. So Alinsky's philosophy encouraged grassroots organizing and mobilization, often using creative protest to challenge government corporate authorities. Alinsky's community organizing has often been described as anarcho-syndicalist, engaging communities in mass mobilization while holding the state accountable for its promises. Unlike radical Marxist ideologies, Alinsky focused on achieving reform through the system rather than overthrowing it. So advocacy planning builds on conflict resolution. So this was his key theme for Saul Alinsky's key theme, that advocacy planning builds on conflict resolution and organized community action as tools for negotiation with the state. So there's also Sherry Arnstein. She wrote Citizen Participation and the Ladder of Participation. In 1969, she introduced the Ladder of Citizen Participation, which was a framework that describes varying levels of community involvement in decision-making. So the ladder ranges from token participation, means such as informing communities of decisions, to citizen control, where communities rely or actively shape policies. So Arnstein's contribution emphasized that authentic participation requires power sharing rather than symbolic gestures. Advocacy planners, according to Sherry Arnstein, should ensure communities to have real influence over outcomes. So, madami sila nasa siguro. Alan Heskin. There are two Alans here. Alan Altschuler, he focused on the political nature of urban planning and highlighted the role of planners as mediators between competing groups. And then there's Alan Heskin, 1977, where he introduced the concept of empowerment. So this is important. Please note this, that he introduced the concept of empowerment as a key element of advocacy planning, still in the context of advocacy planning. However, there's that element of empowerment, ensuring that communities not only voice their needs, but also influence decisions. The Norman Krumholz, he was known for transactive planning, also important. A personality which emphasizes ongoing dialogue between planners and communities. Krumholz believed that planning should be an interactive process, allowing for feedback and adaptation to changing community needs. So, here, sorry. Bakit kayo meron cancel? So, who wrote that one? So, is the one outlining. Anyway, that's not mine, okay? So, let's see. Thomas Rainier, Choice Theory of Planning. Rainer explored the decision-making process in planning, advocating for inclusive deliberation among stakeholders to make informed community focused choices. Then David Mazziotti, he wrote underlying assumption of advocacy planning. He analyzed the foundational principles that advocacy planners should follow, including the need to question power dynamics, also prioritize marginalized groups and engage communities through participatory methods. So I think that's all for tonight. Okay, so we will continue with the table of specifications and some related lecture. So I can now stop sharing this one. I hope you learned something tonight. Jen?